Hey, I'm Nick,
And I'm Graeme.
and this is the Dude, Where's My Code podcast. And this is, I think, episode 5 now.
That's right.
Yeah. So we just continued on our conversation about psychological safety. And this time we had a little bit more of a focus around failure and how you can kind of lean on failure for growth and how that ties into psychological safety in a software engineering team.
Yeah, making it safe to fail and that's impact on people's, I guess, team's productivity, right? Or like just having a good culture, which is counterintuitive to talk about failure as having a positive culture. But actually, I think that's the reality of it. And we get into a little more about that.
Right. So yeah, we talk about what it's like to fail, how you learn from your failures, what makes that okay, and sort of why that makes it really beneficial for the folks on your team to be able to be in that situation. So we hope you enjoy, and if you could do us a favor and like the video if you enjoy the content and subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. And thanks for tuning in.
How long has it been since we actually sat down and chatted? Anyways, like,
Oh man, it's been, yeah, I guess about 2 weeks now.
is it 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Just about the
Yeah.
amount of time I would expect COVID to take me down.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't even know what to expect with that. And I know, like, I was super busy over the last couple of weeks as well. So
Well, that's good.
I had a lot of team planning and like sort of year-end reviews and stuff. So I didn't really have. I was just swamped. But
Mm.
um,
We are approaching the end of the year, aren't we?
yeah,
Wow.
like it feels pretty crazy, but that is what it is, I guess. And actually, this did come up too in a lot of my conversations because I have a lot of like junior folks on my team. But the last time you and I were chatting, we were actually getting into. I mean, we talked about intelligent jerks with the context of psychological safety, right? So when I was kind of getting together with some of my more junior folks in particular, I was really chatting with them about, as they're as they're advancing in their careers, trying to give them that space for ensuring psychological safety is there, right? I want to make sure that, yes, they're focused on their smaller areas, and as they're kind of getting a little bit more experience, how can they push that boundary a little bit, and how can I make sure that they feel safe that they can do that and
Mm-hmm.
not be like one super quick example is engaging teams that contact us and stuff and being able to say, jump in and try to help them. It might be uncomfortable because you don't have expertise in all of the areas, but like that's okay. So, you're not going to let the team down if you say the wrong thing. It's actually good if you're jumping in to try and help.
And your job isn't to solve their problem, it's to help their problem get solved, right? Even if you're just
Yeah.
proxying into the team and being a shield, you don't have to know the answer. That's probably the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And yeah, that's exactly it. So I think trying to convey that for people is, it's been really challenging. And I get it because um, like I am their manager and I have to do a similar thing when I go into on-call rotations. And I sometimes feel like I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm also trying to lean into that to kind of demonstrate like, hey, look, we have a safe place here. The whole team is working together to help each other, right? So um, let's lean into this. Let's try our best. That's really all we can ask is try. Um,
mhm.
and if you're wrong, it's okay. Like someone on your team will be there to back you up and make sure we can course correct, and you're going to learn from it. So
There was a Slack thread recently for one of the tech Slacks I'm in, and I'm going to paraphrase it, and I hope I don't get it wrong. But someone was talking about leveling engineers, and I think they were talking about maybe building a career ladder internally or something.
okay.
And anyway, the part they said they were struggling with was juniors. And they made this comment. I'm sure they didn't necessarily mean it exactly. I'm not sure the way it came across, but the comment they said was like, juniors typically are like, they didn't say not efficient, but they kind of said like, they almost said they're like net not contributors to the team because they like
Oh,
take the seniors time away, like needing mentorship and guidance, and they can do menial stuff by themselves, but they need like assistance and handholding to the rest. And I remember thinking like my initial reaction to that was like, I don't, is that a safe place for a junior to be? where like you're a junior and you're basically being told you're kind of a drain on the team, and like you don't really know how to do things because you're a junior. And I thought that was very odd, because for me, I have never viewed a junior as a drain on the team. Yes, they can't contribute from a place of as much experience. So
Sure.
are they likely to like lead most of the projects or like do the right architectural designs themselves? No. But if you're working on a highly collaborative team, if the whole team is coming up with the thing we want to build, let's say,
Right.
and then it gets decomposed and people take tasks, like, I don't know. It really got me thinking about, what does it mean to be a junior on a team who's empowered to like push their boundaries? And is it not safe to push the boundaries of your skill set if like you know the people above you view you as not likely to be able to come up with the right things or do the right things? And how do you grow out of that space without being constantly worried that like you're being watched and everything you do that might fail will be critiqued harshly as, hey, this person still doesn't know what they're doing?
Right. I think it's sounds kind of funny. I can partially, like, I think I can understand probably where that comment would have come from about the time sink, right? Like I do know that like the people I work with in particular, the domain that we have, there's so much, like, I call it tribal knowledge, and it
Mm-hmm.
does require a ton of time from the more senior people on the team to be able to kind of sync up and educate. So like, yes, I can see that being a time sink, but
If you have the kind of, I don't mean for this to like sound like a negative
yeah,
critique
yeah,
on the culture, but like, but if you have the kind of culture where like the senior people have that tribal knowledge, and that tribal knowledge is that important or pertinent to the success of projects, like, is that even the right place to be as a development organization?
right. Yeah, yeah, it's totally interesting, right? And I think um like, given the space that we're in, we have so much we have so much, call it like legacy infrastructure or legacy product space that we're supporting and then trying to kind of bring forward into the, more modern age. And this predates even me, right? So there's just so much there. And the I guess, like, I think that the more junior people on the team probably feel like, hey, I am sucking away this person's time. Like, I don't want to be doing that. But like, part of it is like they have to learn, and it's a combination of asking the questions, making sure
Mhm.
that they have that safe place to ask the questions, and we encourage that like a ton. But the other part that I think really helps, and in my opinion is the more effective way to learn, is just by doing. There's like there's so much to do, and if you just continue to keep doing the things, like, you will learn that tribal knowledge by putting up the pull requests and trying to solve the bugs and do the investigations and being wrong some of the time, and having some of those more senior people be like, oh yeah, like, here's a learning opportunity, and then kind of presenting it.
Mm, that's a good point. When I was a tester at Desire to Learn, and I had like, you know, desire to learn to be a coder.
I
Um,
see what you did there.
yeah, it just works. I wanted to move into automation and whatever. This actually comes from, this is like one example of my like saying yes to opportunities as a growth path. But they wanted some internal tool written, and no one had time to do it. And I kind of like said, hey, I've got time. I could make time. I can take a crack at this.
Sure, yeah.
Um, and so I put together, it was actually the first time I'd ever written anything in C#. I had come from a bit of a Java background, so it wasn't like horribly shocking, but, and I wrote this tool, and then someone was like, oh, you should, you should put it through code review, right? Like, even though it's an internal tool, like you should still
Yep.
follow like
Buckle up.
good processes. So, okay, that's fair enough. And I put it up for code review, and some senior developer, whatever, somebody, um, they just lit it up. Like
Some intelligent jerk, right?
they, you know what? I don't even think they were.
No.
Like I think it was they like it was just they just roasted it, and I remember. I think I'm like there must have been some space in terms of the leadership above me, some understanding, right, that I was taking like I was the only person who could devote time to this, so maybe it wouldn't
Sure.
be as perfect or as fast. I'm not exactly sure, but um, I replied to the code review just being like, "Hey, like thank you for your time and all of your feedback. I'm just learning. This is the first time I've ever written anything in C sharp, and so this is all going to be very helpful for me. And I'm going to go and make all those changes and learn about the things I didn't know about." And the developer wrote back, and it was something like to the effect of like, "Holy shit! Like I didn't know that this was your first time. Like that, through that lens, this is really great. Let me like help coach you on some of the things." And it was this huge shift.
So definitely not an intelligent jerk then. There we go.
Definitely not. No, not through that. Yeah, not through that interaction. But then it was just like it really shifted to this like probably from like a why did we hire this dude, like this is not good, to like, oh wow, actually like I see someone's trying,
Right.
let me like help you. And together we actually ultimately built a thing that solved the problem, did really well. Yeah, it took a little bit more of somebody else's time, but they certainly weren't offering their time up to just write it in the first place. So that collectively we were able to accomplish it. So I just thought that was really cool that there was space for me to say yes to something like that wasn't really my wheelhouse. And then someone like a senior developer was able to recognize, hey, this person's trying, and let's use this to our advantage.
Well, and it's kind of interesting too. I wonder, like, I don't know the particular situation very well, right? But like, I wonder, I wonder why it's difficult sometimes for us to kind of lean into that second path that person took, where it was like, let me just help and teach, versus the prior path, which is kind of like probably a little bit more just straight up critical and having an expectation on you to just um
I
know
mean,
the things.
it read confrontational, right? Like,
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole on code reviews and stuff, but like this is just one of those. It's like such a common place that people are spending time in software engineering, is like checking out code on code reviews, reading through it, leaving comments, and you spend so much time like collaborating through that mechanism that like I don't know, like there's so much miscommunication I think happens through just how we communicate through like typing messages.
mhm.
And exactly to your point, like literally if you just assign a voice to someone, because you're not hearing them talk, you assign a voice to what they wrote, they could have literally been like, oh yeah, this is awesome, Graham is doing this, and then like leaving a comment that was like, yeah, we really hate curly braces on the same line. This is C sharp. And you're like, man, like this person really is nitpicking my stuff here. And like you've just assigned a tone of voice. Like all the like tone of voice is one very particular thing, but um
Mhm.
it's just interesting that if we spend so much time there, why would we not want to lean in with like a let's just help everyone and make it feel like, you know, a place where you want to put code up and you're like, I can't wait to like learn about what's gonna come. Instead, I think most of us are probably like, oh crap, like here we go. Like
Here we go. I think, well, I forget. One of the comments was like, your code's impossible to read, man. It seems like you just right clicked on every resharper suggestion and switched them all to link statements. And I was like, yeah, I totally did that. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
yeah,
And it
it
was like,
it came up and told me to do it, so I did the thing. Yeah.
yeah, it was horrible. It was taking like nice little clean loops and making them like multi-line link statements that whatever. Um,
Well,
but
and maybe just to quickly ask about this, I mean, can you explain like how you were feeling during that? Because the first part I think is a really good example of like in this particular situation, like you are a junior person in that little environment, right? So
mhm.
um like how did you feel? Because I think if you can explain some of that, that really helps kind of elaborate on like maybe, for both of us, and we're people listening, watching, right? It's like, yeah, like I don't know, like I've been in this space for years and years, but we kind of want to bring out some of that, like what does that feel like for someone that's junior and feeling like you don't have a safe place?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. When I think back about it, I remember being thrilled that I was able to help solve a problem that people wanted solved. I was thrilled that I was writing code that I had never written before and it was
Yeah.
working.
it,
Um,
it compiles. Oh
Pretty
my.
stoked about some really complicated statements that Resharper was making look really cool. But overall, like just really feeling good about like what was going on and um, putting it up for code review. I don't think I don't think I gave it a lot of thought because I didn't do it, and somebody was just like, "Hey, like we should just do this," and it was like, okay, like without really thinking about what the consequences were going to be.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
but getting that first review was like, yeah, I mean, I probably considered just being like, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't be doing this. Like it was so closing the door, and I think fortunately, I had enough support, I think, from my manager who was also my mentor at the time, um, and maybe just the environment that we were in as a team and as a development group, like the culture we had built. Something gave me enough of a shove to be like, no, 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 hold on, like take a breath. And it did take me saying to myself, I think this person is they're trying to be
Mm,
helpful, right? They're trying to do their job and
right,
make this good and something that we want to have submitted to our code base.
right.
Um,
Something you could lean on and probably did was like, hey, wait, like we all try to act with best intentions, right? If this
that
doesn't feel like that, like
it it
remind yourself.
definitely, yeah, like it came from a hey, I guess that like let me assume best intentions. I don't really know if I was intentionally doing that at the time, but it really did take me saying no, let me turn this thing around.
Right.
But I don't know if everybody would be able to do that. That's not the most humble thing to say, but I guess what I mean is like it could very easily have gone the other way where I was like, oh my god, like I'm terrible. I don't know why I volunteered for this. I shouldn't have even bothered. Why don't we just throw this entire thing that I spent a couple days on in the trash and let someone who knows what they're doing do it?
Yeah, and
Um,
it's interesting you say that too, because I don't have like a stat on how many people encountered a situation like this and get over the hump slash don't. But if you can, I don't know, like if you think about people that you manage or have managed in the past, like I don't know, for me personally, I can think of situations where people did not get over the hump the first time and in fact were exposed to multiple situations like that, and you can literally see that they kind of get bogged down and they're like, it's almost like they just can't get work done, and it's like, they're smart people, they know, like I don't know, it's like it's hard to explain, but it's like they just they seem like it's hard for them to make progress on anything, and like you can't really tell what's blocking them. They don't seem motivated, they're not excited, they're not engaged about their work. And I mean, I don't know, like sometimes we're doing work that's kind of boring too, but I'm
sure.
it's part of
D-
engineering.
I guess let me ask you this: do you
Sure.
think people can grow in an environment that isn't psychologically safe?
um I would say perhaps, but
I
it
mean,
would be really
people,
difficult. Yeah.
yeah, maybe people do, I guess.
Yeah, I think I think it certainly doesn't encourage growth. I think if people are growing in an environment that's not psychologically safe, it's because they're I'm totally speculating here, but I would guess it's because they're stretching their like social interactions and kind of like I don't know, like willpower and stuff in different ways to try and overcome that. But even as I say that, it's literally suggesting that there's this boundary that people are trying to get over just to be able to start progressing in other ways. So I do think it's possible, but I don't think that it's encouraging like technical growth in any capacity.
So inversely, it is easier or more likely that people will grow when they're feeling like they're in an environment of safety, where the group around them and their leadership are invested in their success, and that might mean mistakes happen along the way.
Yeah, totally, totally. I think, I was chatting with you, kind of explaining that, like, when I have more junior folks and I'm trying to, I don't know, like, everyone's kind of career journey looks a little bit differently, but I would say in general, I find that there's a period as a more junior engineer where it's like, okay, like, you've been working on more individual things, and let's try to kind of break through that to something that's like a bit more of like a feature area versus like individual smaller things. Try to take some ownership there, and that might mean that you're fielding questions for it. Like, I don't know, like, you're just kind of growing in that space, and sometimes people are like, yeah, like, I don't know, like, I'm a little bit nervous about doing that. And I think just giving them that space where it's like, look, like, it's not going to be perfect, it doesn't have to look perfect right away, but letting them know that this is the direction, this is how you're going to grow by trying some uncomfortable things, and that it's okay for it to not be like perfect right away.
Growth isn't repeated success over and over again. I think that's a pretty unrealistic expectation for anybody, to feel like you grow by constantly succeeding.
Yeah, I would say it is repeated success, but there's other things that are sprinkled in between.
Yeah, it's back to back
Yeah,
successes
yeah,
for like, yeah.
yeah. I think if you have back to back successes over and over, it's probably just called luck. Not
Or you really are that good.
Yeah, maybe. There's probably someone listening or watching that's like, these guys are idiots. Like, every time I get a home run, and like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you don't need us as managers.
yes. Sorry, you can turn the video or the audio off at this point, then, person. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not back to back successes, right? And I would say a lot of the time, um, there's things we're doing that we literally will try and fail, and it's the learning from that thing that we fail at. I'm going to use air quotes when I say fail.
Hmm.
um, it's the learning from that thing that allows us to get some of the following successes, um, I think.
Yeah, this is the little f big F thing that you talk about.
Yeah, yeah. So when I kind of talk to people about, when I am talking about psychological safety, and I guess depends on the context as well. So it doesn't have to be like technical. It could be, like, I talk about this even with, like, hey, if we're trying to improve the team in general, like, what if in retros you try suggesting some of the things on your mind, right? Um, I try to let people know that, personally, I look at failures as little f and big F failures. The little f failures are the ones where you're suggesting something, you're trying something out. If it doesn't work, like, that's totally okay. Like, let's learn from that. We're trying to give you the space so that you can have the little f failures, right? And it's only a big F failure, the big fail. You can think of another word that starts with F. Um, it's only a big F fail when, you're not learning and you're repeating those errors, right? That's where I'm like, that's actually a failure. All the other little F failures are growth. They're
Hmm.
learning.
Yeah, yeah. I say the same similar thing. My phrase is, you know, succeeding or failing. It's through trying that we grow, not through constantly succeeding.
That sounds
Um,
like a really wise, like, potential, like, Yoda kind of
Maybe I
thing. Like,
lifted it from Yoda. Maybe it's just I'm not enough of a Star Wars nerd to
yeah, I don't.
someone yell at me if I if that's
I
like
think
a
you have to say it like, I don't. You have to change the verb order around or something for it to be Yoda-esque. But yeah, that sounds very wise, I would say.
fail or fail not. So I don't know.
Fail or fail not, you will. I don't know. Yeah,
Oh boy, Star Wars noobness is showing.
yeah. There's gonna be some angry people, but sorry.
Yeah, yeah. It's in many ways it's redefining what success is. Um, even to the point I've talked about success as the team growing and learning together before. Ideally, I think most of the time, we don't have the luxury of just constantly learning for the sake of learning. So success is tied to customer value being delivered,
Right.
KPIs and OKRs moving. But at the end of the day, like, that doesn't just happen directly. If you are so risk averse that you don't want to have any of these little f failures, I suspect you're not moving at your true velocity. And for
Right.
fear of failure interrupting your velocity, you're actually probably operating at a crappier velocity than if you were willing to try, fail, and learn from certain things.
Right. And none of those things, like when you're trying to push different KPIs and stuff, and I'm saying none of those things, and someone here we go, like someone could say that's not true, but I don't think any of those things are like truly linear, right? Like you're gonna push some KPIs in some directions, other ones might not move at the same rate. Maybe they come back a little bit, and that's because maybe you didn't optimize something perfectly and you can learn from that, or something messed up along the way, learn from that. But it's those learnings over time that you're going to continue to get that growth. And I think a lot of the time too, like I don't know, like when we're failing and learning from that kind of stuff, it's almost like getting educated on things that you weren't, I don't know, like you didn't prioritize, and you get like a really good lesson and you're like, wow, like now, like I don't know, you feel more insightful from whatever the situation was. So in the future, like it's not just things that you had practiced over and over. It's like that I had an experience and I can reflect on that, and I feel like sometimes that, I don't know, it's like more anchored in thought process. But
People, like, it's a good opportunity to learn things like what questions I should have asked sooner that I
yeah,
didn't. And as a junior, potentially, I mean, anybody, but maybe juniors feel the pressure more to be like, oh, I shouldn't ask that. That'll make me look stupid, or like I should just know.
that's
Um,
such a common one, is like the don't want to ask because I don't want to look stupid. It's a combination of don't want to look stupid and don't want to take people's time, back to the beginning of this conversation, right?
yeah,
But
which is totally fair and respectable. I think that balance of like answer the question for yourself versus get help and when to do which is very tough to find. And I've talked
yep,
to a lot of juniors, helping them kind of pathfind through that without being able to give a definitive answer.
right,
It's more of an experience that you have to go through. But that this learning from failure is a really good example where if it's okay to little f fail, you start to discover all of the things you could have done differently that will make you better going forward. And
right.
if there was no space to screw up, um, you would have never learned any of these new things, questions to ask, had that experience. So you don't know what things will result in failure because you've never actually experienced the path to failure.
Right. Yeah, and it's really, again, like as managers, I think kind of two parts here, right? Like as managers, when we're working with individuals on the team, we want to make sure that that they understand they have a safe place, right? Like being able to understand like what types of failures, like I don't know, like I'm assuming someone could categorize a type of failure where you're like, look, you can't do that. That's actually like that's truly not a good thing. But
Mhm.
but I think setting the expectation about the types of failures you can have. Um, Go ahead, yeah, jump in.
I have an example, and it's a
Sure.
secondhand story, so I hope it's fairly accurate. But my understanding, there's a local company, doesn't matter who, at some point they operate infrastructure, cloud infrastructure for other companies, and so when they go down, it's a very big deal. And the way I understand it, one of the engineers, maybe a more senior engineer, accidentally deleted like their entire production, like Kubernetes pod instances, like just like gone. And like that's a really big deal. And
You
my
just
understanding,
press Control Z though, right? And then it just undo. Yeah.
everything comes back up and you're good to go. They they got up and they walked out kind of into the middle of the engineering floor and basically looked around and were like, hey, I think I just screwed up really bad, and I'm pretty sure I deleted like the prod instances. And the response was, okay, let's go figure this out. And all the people who were able to, rapidly respond to that got together. Yep, you totally did. Okay, let's go through our procedures and fix this. And ultimately they did. It obviously resulted in downtime. It was obviously a very crappy situation, but the ultimate response was, okay, well, our process has failed, right? To allow you to be able to do this. You're safe, right? You're okay. You have a job, like you've made a mistake, and now you're going to learn from it. And we as an organization are going to learn from it, and that's okay. And what you would have been fired for is spending the next 3 hours not telling anybody and scrambling to fix this issue by yourself while the customers are down and no one in the org knows what is happening because you weren't honest about the situation. So they've defined failure as like covering up mistakes and causing problems and then continuing to cause that problem. That's a big F failure. But success is, hey, I've made a mistake, but like I'm very quick to own it and respond to it, and we like could do something about that. And I love that. I mean, at Circle, we used to share frequently in big Slack channels. Like people would always share their biggest mistake that impacted production, and people had some just wild stories about stuff they've done that totally like mangled prod or took down entire services or whatever. And people share them, one, because they're usually pretty funny, but two, because juniors and people who haven't caused a production outage can start to feel safer that like, oh, all these people I'm looking up to or people I view as really strong engineers have these stories of failure that have ultimately shaped them to be good engineers, right?
I haven't attended one, but Microsoft does have a share. I can't speak. Share your fail. I mixed all the words. Share your fail talks that different engineers and stuff will put on. I have not yet been, but it's for the same purpose, right? Like it's let's learn from each other, right? Let's make sure that you know that people have made mistakes, and like look, like Microsoft is still around. There were a couple of engineers that were telling me some like early days stories in the area we work in where like things just went real wrong, and they learn from it. And exactly to your point, I love that story because it's like the process failed. It's not you as a person are a terrible person, you should feel bad, go home and cry. It's no, you were able to do something we should have been able to protect against. So like why don't we go protect against that? Maybe it's a good opportunity to think about other situations we should go protect against. And I love that the organization took the stance of like, let's learn from this. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, here's the difference, right? They go and they change a bunch of the security access controls so that like, basically nobody can execute console lines that are able to delete everything that much, right? Like, or if you're a different organization, you take that engineer's access controls and you strip them down to nothing and you basically hamstring them and make them a crappier engineer because it's like, we can't trust you, so we take everything away from you. And then what happens the next time somebody accidentally deletes something in production, right?
Yeah, and so that's a really cool like tangible concrete example, and I think if you apply that metaphorically to your software engineers in different situations where it was like, hey, you designed the wrong thing, or like you introduced a bug in the code and stuff, like it would be the equivalent to like if you're not literally taking their ability to push code away, they will feel like I can't get code. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to push it up. Like, yeah.
This is why we have code reviews. This is why we have CI checks in place before merge. Like, I mean, I've had to explain to juniors before, and I'm always happy to. But when they do something that ultimately results in a bug, or they take something down, and inevitably most people, even if they know, they still feel a little bit bad. Like even if they're like safe, like most people are like, ah, man, I shouldn't have done that. I wish I hadn't, whatever. And I always have to tell them like, listen, Sure, like you wrote some code that did a thing that was unintended,
Mhm.
but at least one person code reviewed it, probably more. Everybody who wrote tests and checks in the CI system had a contribution to a chance to protect from the thing that you did and didn't, right?
Right.
It rolled into production. Like it's like I'm like I have to take them through like all the things that happened for that bug to make its way out,
Right.
and be like, look, this is a team miss. I don't even like calling them failures. I'm like, it's a miss. We missed something, and in some ways, I mean, it's a stretch, but like in some ways, you're helping because you're actually making things more robust for us, right? We're catching edge cases. We're looking at opportunities to improve, but we only do that again through trying, potentially making mistakes,
Right.
and then growing.
Yeah. So I think if I reflect on what we've been talking about, like I think the two things that, and they're almost the same thing that I would kind of just want to reiterate for people is like from the management perspective, right? Like I think I was starting to say it a little bit earlier, but like with when you're working with individuals, like making sure that um like situational leadership, right? Especially more junior folks, making sure that they, you know, they know they have a like a safe place, that they can make mistakes and things like that. And please spend the time doing it because I don't think in just a team setting to say, hey, like, yeah, it's okay if you introduce bugs, like, no worries. Um, I think that that's part of it, but I think as individuals, like, try to spend some time with folks and understand because you'll probably pick up on when people are kind of feeling a little off from it, especially after little f failures or misses. I think spend some time with that. And then the other part that's very much related is like, on a team level, try to set the expectation about what failures look like and how we learn from them, the different opportunities for that. So whether it's on the technical side and it's like code related, if it's related to things we want to try with the team, because you can apply the concept to technical things, to team improvements, all that kind of stuff, and just making sure that as a team you've kind of defined like what that looks like, and I think that will really help people lean into that.
Yeah, I think it is so important not to just say you're safe here, it's safe here. Um, it that it can be hollow, especially if people have been burned by
Hmm.
unhealthy organizations that maybe potentially even say it's safe and then act like it's not. So it's so important that it's not just saying it, but like reinforcing that in as many ways as you can. And that's through like blameless retrospectives, right? That's through like one-on-one coaching. Um, and just I've seen instances where like people will be like ripping into code, like laughing about like, oh my god, like look at this mess, like that caused a bug, and then they'll be like, psych, I wrote it myself 3 years ago. Like now here I am, like debugging my own mistakes from 3 years ago.
I was just gonna say
Um,
it's the most humbling experience when you're mentally doing that and being like, oh yeah, like I wrote that. Oh.
oh, there's like so many great examples I used to see of people like screenshotting the Git blame where it's like their own name and like like
Yeah.
there it is. I forgot I even wrote this in the first place.
Yeah.
Or like really really good examples of senior engineers or management or CTOs chiming in and being like, "Ooh, you're in that mess. Like I wrote that mess. Like good luck with that." And just like really making it obvious. Like, look, it's that people aren't like writing spectacular code everywhere around us and I'm like super proud of it 5 years from now and it causes no bugs and everybody's like sunshine and rainbows about it. It's just not. So all those things, right? The failure chats, like the stories of failure or whatever, like all these things are ways to reinforce like it's okay. And then totally like doubling down on what you said, coupling that with setting the definitions and criteria for what really is success and what is unacceptable failure.
Right.
Um, hiding things, right? Um, covering mistakes. Like if you're clear about that, then it can be safer to make the correct kind of mistakes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's awesome. Um, so yeah, I think this is really good because I think as we continue to talk about psychological safety, like really a big part of that, I think we both were agreeing is that having a safe place, room to be able to fail, that kind of thing really ties into psychological safety. And ultimately, if you're trying to have a high performing team, like this is really a big part of that to make sure you have that psychological safety.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want teams scared, right? Scared into risk adversity, like, because guess what? Like, you know how you make no mistakes? By doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty easy to do. I don't even have to log in, right? I just sit back and
There you go. No
not
bugs.
making mistakes. Yeah. Awesome,
Cool.
Graham.
Well, this was
Well,
fun.
thank you. Yeah, I think no, it was really good to talk about failures and psychological safety as always. So I think we'll try to cook up some more topics on psychological safety. But um, yeah, this is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm over the COVID hump now, so we can safely get back into a rhythm and a cadence and talk about this more soon.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Graham. See ya.
See ya.